Yeah. Supra Labs, we taking off. No brakes. All gas. Now watch me boss up. Blockchain's future, yeah, we stacking.
All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Community Call, our monthly community call with our founders, Joshua Tobkin, CEO, and normally with John, our CBO and co-founder as well. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to see it, John is currently on a flight back from Argentina. Of course, so much happening in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was Dev Connect, pretty much Ethereum's World Fair, where we actually had a keynote at the multi-VM day, and it was a very big keynote indeed. I think the most important thing there was the announcement of our EVM compatibility on testnet, which went live. And I want to start with that. Some big press that came out. It was very, very big news. You would have seen us published on Decrypt and on Cointelegraph as well. I'm going to start with the multi-VM support. Josh, that was huge to be live now on testnet. We can attract EVM developers. How has the feedback been from EVM developers, and what are you excited about seeing built on Supra from EVM devs?
You know, the big thing is, you know, we're all fast, right? And of course, we're claiming to be the fastest executor in the world. And we have the data and we have the proof. And we actually are very confident about this. But speed is not enough, right? So what about a platform where you can have speed, but actually access to Oracle, cross-chain communication, and for the first time ever for EVM chains and developers, automation. So that's coming. That's actually not just ready just yet, because it is a complicated kind of development. It's not exactly the same thing as the Move language setup, but it's very close. But imagine that, like, we have our team, you know, we've been traveling a lot of flights. So John's still in the air right now as we speak. Other teammates are flying to different destinations, so on and so forth. But they've had great conversations with developers at Dev Connect, and developers are saying that, wow, so I can actually do the thing I thought about 3 years ago on Supra, right? Because, you know, a lot of folks come into blockchain don't realize that blockchains don't have automation. So yeah, I mean, it's good. It's early, but it's good. And you know, the nice thing is a lot of developers can kind of just deploy, test it out, see how they like it, see if they can actually pull off what they were trying to do in the past. I have spoken to some EVM developers recently that are interested in Supra. And, you know, some of the kind of automation stuff they're doing is off-chain, and it's opaque and it's centralized, and they just have no other way to do it, really. So no, it's really exciting. You know, one thing I'm very excited about are folks that have, just as a kind of illustration into what are possible with automation and like DeFi, we call it AutoFi. So some teams that I'm working closely and monitoring their progress. You may have heard of like central limit, excuse me, not a central limit order book, excuse me. I meant to say concentrated liquidity market makers, CLMMs, right? And the thing is, this is like Uniswap, like what is that, V4, something like this. They, you know, typically the issue with the existing AMM model is that it's not hyper efficient. There's, you know, value gets kind of, there's a high slippage, there's impermanent loss, and you know, the idea of these concentrated liquidity market makers is to concentrate your liquidity in certain ranges. Now with automation, what we're working towards, and this will be like not possible on other chains, is as the price fluctuates, the liquidity moves within like a 5% band. You know, imagine that. So you always have maximum liquidity, depth, less slippage, less impermanent loss, more fees for liquidity providers. So this is the type of thing that I think is very inspiring. And that you know, not developers on both Move and EVM are going to be doing.
Now, the big thing as well, sort of in parallel with that news we released about EVM compatibility, is the fact that you challenged all EVM developers and developers in general to beat Supra's EVM execution speed. You put out a $1 million bounty that closed on the 21st of November. I'm just curious how the response was to that. Obviously, Cointelegraph covered it. It was big news in the industry. 21st of November is, you know, 3 days ago. Did you have any satisfying applications, or is this something that's just too big to even attempt to beat?
We had only one that tried to challenge it properly, but it was unfortunately well, fortunate for us, but unfortunately it was very incomplete. Like the algorithm that was submitted doesn't really work. It's not too sound. And for example, if you were to execute the transactions on Ethereum correctly, you would end up with a different result. So it doesn't work, but nonetheless, it was a interesting, clever idea. But it just in case this person's watching, thank you for your submission. We'll get back to you very soon. And actually, we're going to be talking about it internally tonight to see, hey, were there some interesting intuitions here? Actually, I think there were, but no, it appears that it just doesn't work. The approach doesn't quite qualify. So we'll do a proper write-up on it after we do a thorough investigation. Other than that, the only other submissions are just kind of verifying our results. Like, yeah, you guys are crushing it, and way faster than like Monad, and way faster, of course, in sequential execution. I mean, the thing is, when you kind of really get into it, these things are very there's kind of limits to what can be done. You kind of look at it and there's like, well, you have to understand if you kind of have to either take this approach for the algorithm or this approach. Maybe there's some others that we just have not thought of, and which I was a little bit, kind of curious to see if this submission had some more teeth, so to speak. And it was interesting intuition, but it doesn't quite work. It doesn't work at all, actually. So, but still, like basically when you're in this topic, and this is a topic that we studied for and we worked on and researched for a year and a half. And so we looked at a lot of different approaches. I mean, we had a lot of internal debates. What about doing it this way, doing it that way? And there are these kind of limits, like they're kind of almost like physical limits, in terms of make sure that you execute things in a way that are, as efficient as possible. Basically, in our model, we kind of take a second, not even a second, like a millisecond, to scan the block for contention and conflicts, and we can map that out and create what's called a dependency graph, a DAG, a direct acyclic graph. And this will give us a hyper efficient way to do this. This is why we're feeling very confident that this is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to beat on the EVM. We may extend this. I mean, so we had it running for starting with like really small bounty. It's like, hey, let's 10x this. Okay, now it's 25,000, then 40,000. Then community member said, well, if you're so confident, Josh, why don't you put $1 million in there? I'm like, well, I couldn't get that over the foundation. They're like, wait a second, hold on, what's resistance? I was like, I'll do it, put it on me. And of course, because I'm a co-author, I've been with the team researching it for a year and a half straight. And yeah, no, I think we're good there, and we probably will consider opening it up for a couple more weeks. Maybe open it up to the folks at Code Arena, to try. These are like all developers, and ultimately, the whole point of this exercise was to get to the bottom of the truth. Like, what is the actual truth? Who actually has the best approach, right? And that's got to be worth something. Now, of course, step by step we'll get there, but there's more to it. There is also consensus. I just want to always, educate our audience that consensus end to end is like 60% of the journey. Parallel execution is like 20-25%. So you want to optimize consensus more than parallel execution, frankly. This is why you'll see, this is part of the reason why Monad probably took another year to launch, is because they realized, oh, we need to come out with the consensus algorithm, that otherwise their gains are, they optimized the wrong thing. They raised money on the wrong thing. It is what it is. And don't get me wrong, like I'm happy for the success. I just don't really believe that other than ecosystem building and marketing, that they're excellent at anything. Like any particular component is like this rediscovered things that like the Sui, Aptos, and Supras of the world already knew for 3 years. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, okay, welcome to the party, I guess, and still like there's things that that we're doing that are, way more performant, including our optimistic hydrangea. So we have hydrangea, you've heard. We have Moonshot, which is live today. Hydrangea is the newer consensus algorithm, which is, it smokes our own Moonshot. So Moonshot is outperforming Monad's BFT. Hydrangea smokes our own Moonshot. Optimistic hydrangea, like a new technique in the kind of that family of algorithm, is basically the physical limit. Like, and we're talking about, we like, for folks that are in the industry, like researchers, there's basically Alpenglow from Solana, which is going to smoke Monad, by the way, and hydrangea, and something called Minimit from Commonwear. and we're all kind of in the ballpark of the same line of thinking. But Minimit was saying, oh, they beat Solana and Supra's hydrangea in their paper, right? The researchers, they're quoting us because they know that this is a huge deal, but they're not aware of our latest update to hydrangea, which is beating them. So we'll publish that eventually. I bring that up only because, once again, the end-to-end life cycle of a transaction is 6%. It's consensus and data dissemination. So we really focus on the right things in the right order. And I really believe that the hydrangea with our parallel execution algorithm is the absolute fastest you can do. You can run the EVM. So yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna prove it, and we'll probably put up another bounty at some point because it's just true. And the whole point of this, right, was to find out what is the truth. We all want to know the truth. There's been $100 billion invested into scaling blockchain, apparently, right? Isn't that an insane amount? So yeah, I mean, I think credit where credit's due, and right now this seems like that's us. So congratulations to our team.
There's a lot of talk about your recent post on X, which I want to dive into real quick. Even Mr. Bullrun Supra, and hey to everyone in the chat, thank you for all the comments. But Mr. Bullrun also mentioned your X post here. A little subtle mention: the Emperor has no clothes. You were about to fly. Obviously, you guys are all over the place between different locations, different events, different meetings, and you were about to fly. You had a lot to say about the EVM compatible competitors. I'm curious, how does Supra's parallel EVM execution compare to these competitors?
We're number one. Number two is Rise Chain.
Which you mentioned in that post as well.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. That's right. So in Rise Chain, their ideas are from basically applying ideas from Aptos to EVM. Okay. We basically have studied everything. And I mean, remember, even the work from Aptos came from traditional Web 2 STM techniques. So everyone's like kind of standing on each other's shoulders, right? We wouldn't be here without the prior work as well, including the work done in academia from the STM work from a long time ago as well. But we believe that we have identified the absolute maximum you can take this, including, by the way, which isn't even implemented in this iteration that I put the bounty on. So for example, in case someone beat us, right? I said, okay, hold up. If you read the rules, there's another 45 days to let us finish our algorithm. We didn't even finish the whole thing, right? Which is what we call an adaptive algorithm, meaning, just to kind of share a little bit here, I'll try to keep it simple, is if the payload is small, or if it's depending on the payload, like what is the contents of the block, right? Is there a lot of smart contracts? Is there like it's like an NFT drop? Is there like what's called contention? A lot of people trying to access the same state, or is it just like value transfers, right? Depending on the kind of nature of the block itself, a different execution algorithm is more appropriate. So our adaptive approach, not to kind of spill the beans here, but we are looking into things like using ML, machine learning, to kind of detect these patterns in advance and just be hyper efficient to decide which execution algorithm to use, whether that is sequential. So for example, if you have a block that has a lot of contention, okay, a lot of like folks trying to access the same smart contract, executing it serially or sequentially is actually the faster approach. Parallel executions algorithms, they don't work well. So if we can identify, oh, this block has a lot of contention, we actually should execute this one sequentially. So things like this is why I was saying, hey, in case you guys beat us in 45 days, we'll implement the adaptive algorithm, and we're like 100% sure at that stage that you can't beat this. So yeah, I mean, basically when I say the Emperor has no clothes, I'm just saying, like, look, how's Monad good for Ethereum, right? There's no DA, there's no posting to Ethereum. There is pioneering the EVM techniques, but they're not even state of the art. So why would Ethereum use their approach? They're actually going to be taking a lot of value and attention away from Ethereum and layer ones and Ethereum layer twos. At least for Supra, as we're engaging the Ethereum Foundation, and we would give ETH layer one, maybe not the layer twos, but we would give ETH layer one our algorithm, I mean, my background was trying to scale the Ethereum layer 1 back in the day, 2017. So if there's a way to give back, we would. But let's just be honest, like, where exactly does these competing, EVM chains provide value for Ethereum? It's useful in that you bring developers in, but really what's happening is developers are leaving Ethereum to try Monad, as long as their incentives or as long as it's hyped up. And I say this like, to be honest, it's these folks they're good people too. Like, we're all good people. We all are trying to do our best to make an impact in the world, right? And that's fine and that's great. I just, they're just not the best at any single component, and except for building a huge ecosystem. But apparently their marketing was our entire budget, so can't really compare us to that just yet. And I have to remind ourselves, like, this is really an ultra marathon. It's been very challenging and very kind of fatiguing sometimes, especially the recently. Nonetheless, like, these breakthroughs, I do want to mention, for example, Dr. Kate was just given a major award called like the Test of Time, the IACR Test of Time Award, for his work in KZG commitments, which underpin like all ZKP zero knowledge proof technologies, as well as DKG distributed key generation, major cornerstone to major innovations in blockchain. So that's our Dr. Kate, who he invented this 10 years ago, and it's being utilized everywhere at ZKPs basically. So when we have like that type of recognition, we earlier got the most distinguished research paper award at CCS, meaning of like the best paper of the year. That was a Supra research project, right? And the Hydrangia is a huge deal. Supra BTM, the parallel execution algorithm, is a big deal. When we have these breakthroughs, even though it's not necessarily reflected to the general retail audience yet, because they may not understand the impact of this, these are the types of things that keep us going, because we know that we are contributing to the state of the art and to the industry at large. And by the way, like our contributions to Ethereum, KZG is utilized in their data availability technology, right? That would not be possible without Dr. Kate's invention. So yeah, we try to give back when we can, but the truth of the matter is, when I say the emperor has no clothes, is they're just not the best at anything. So let's just play this out. Let's give it a couple more years, see kind of where we're all at.
Yeah, and just a reminder to our audience, Dr. Anneke Kate is our Chief Research Officer, who is a highly distinguished academic on the Supra team, who is a key contributor to ZK proofs. And his recent award is testament to that. Also, something that you mentioned there, Josh, part of that X post that you made was your engagement with the Ethereum Foundation. Can you elaborate a little bit on that engagement regarding our algorithms, and if there has been response and dialogue with the Ethereum Foundation?
It's early. I mean, we have conversations with Ethereum Foundation, Solana Foundation, for both, like, her consensus as well as parallel execution. And by the way, like Solana was one of the first teams to bring parallel execution to blockchain, right? And our technique is probably going to outperform Solana's sea level for parallel execution as well. And Supra is bringing a multi-VM architecture, so it's Move language now, EVM on testnet. We're already working on the Solana virtual machine, so Solana applications can run on Supra eventually. And actually, the interesting thing is, the actual truth is we're aiming to be a better environment to execute your Solana and Ethereum applications on Supra than even those respective chains. Even with Solana's major upgrades coming with Alpenglow, we think Hydrangia with our parallel execution algorithm is actually going to outperform Alpenglow. So we'll see, but that'd be pretty wild, right? If Supra becomes a better infrastructure execution layer than where some of these applications came from originally. So we speak to both Solana Foundation as well as Ethereum Foundation on both parallel execution as well as ZK technology, KZG, as well as the consensus. So yeah, this is, and they've reached out to us and congratulated us on the kind of work we've been doing with like Hydrangia. So it's, researchers are very collaborative, and we like to just understand the truth. Like, we want to know what is the answer, the ultimate answer. We want to, that's like the North Star. Everything else is number two, right? But the North Star is like, let's all identify what is the highest performing way we can make, method to make Web3 work. So that's what we're all about.
Now, Josh, I know that you have a couple of things to share with us via screen share, etc. So when you want to, just jump in. But I also want to touch on our ecosystem right now. There's a lot of stuff happening in the Supra ecosystem as we actually approach a year of being a mainnet live layer one. Obviously, it's been a year since our TGE, which is incredibly exciting. And so our ecosystem has started to build. We have the likes of Solido, who've just launched their solid token, and they activated their TGE recently. AI Garden, of course, one of the groundbreaking NFT and AI protocols. They're about to collaborate with Hug.art. Atmos Protocol launching their Portfolio Watcher. Supralend and Evo both going live on mainnet in the last 2 weeks. Then right now there's Dexlin's ICO. Excuse the South African birds, apologies. But there's the Dexlin ICO on Common Fund right now. They've reached 127% of their sale target. I'd love to know how you feel right now as a founder of a layer one, and that was always your vision. Obviously, you started as an Oracle price data feed, 4 or 5 years ago. Now the big vision of a layer one is real, it's tangible, and you have an entire ecosystem building. How do you feel about seeing these various protocols, these various projects live on your mainnet that you have been instrumental in putting together? What does that make you feel, and how does that look for the future of Supra's ecosystem?
Sure. So first of all, this is a huge team effort, right? And I might have kind of got the ball rolling, and it took a lot of work there to do, and it still is. But this is definitely not I cannot take the credit for this. This is a massive operation. Our engineers and are fantastic. Our researchers are world class. Our community builders, we've been sticking through a lot of challenges. It's been actually the last entire 3 years has not been easy. And, the idea of like, oh, things will be easier after your token generation event, which is almost a year ago. Definitely not. I would say this is just as hard as the other years, if not harder. But it is also very motivating. Like the vision is coming together. I mean, we're the first to do what we're doing. Layer one, built-in Oracle price feeds, built-in cross-chain communication and automation. Now, when I speak to these developers, some of them say, hey, the thing is we've in the past worked on other like layer ones and layer twos, but the thing we like about Supra is that we do have a good amount of DeFi native users that are actually doing things on chain, like using the protocols and understanding it, and like rebalancing pools or whatever, seeking opportunities and such. Moreover, the main driver that makes me really excited is when a developer says, we get to have access to everything that we need and things that we didn't know we needed or wanted in one place. So that's like a major thing that we're going to be proving out, and this is how we're going to be different. Just being fast alone is not enough. No one is doing the vertically integrated stack. Nonetheless, it is so obvious that a single blockchain should do more than one thing, right? So like Monad, smart contract platform, Solana, smart contract platform, the latest next generation blockchains, the Hyperliquids, the Supras, we are doing more than one because we know that you have enough bandwidth and compute to do it, and you should. You have shared security and better speed. And the big unlock, once again, I say this all the time, is layer one with price feeds and automation. Now, of course, cross-chain communications will be very big for our vision to become this intra layer, this layer between layer ones and layer twos, like the brain, where you can control assets across different ecosystems and move them cross-chain automatically, right? Completely backed by layer one security and cryptography. And then the other component in the advent of AI is our AI threshold oracles, right? Threshold AI oracles, rather. That's also been deployed onto one of our private testnets. We're speaking to some other chains and prediction markets, et cetera, around this. And that is kind of like the final piece that unlocks another kind of reasoning intelligence layer, So enshrining this into the core infrastructure is an absolutely massive build. you know, and people are so unfamiliar with like what you're doing. Everyone's like, oh, you're the RWA chain. Oh, you're the, GameFi chain. They try to put you in a box. And actually the truth is what you want is a world computer, right? That's what we're all building. We're supposed to be building at least, right? And a world computer needs to be able to automate things. It needs to be able to communicate to other blockchains. It needs to speak to the outside world. It needs to have, especially in the era of AI, it needs to have the ability to reason. So, that's our ambitious kind of goal. We're working towards that. We have the best architecture to achieve it. The all-in-one blockchain has been the vision from day one. Actually, even before when we launched as an Oracle, we were like, this is a stepping stone. The backbone was always blockchain technology. And we always knew that, wow, it would be so powerful to have it all in one. And but let's roll this out in phases. So it's counterintuitive to what people are used to. We have been described as, Supra is trying to create the iPhone moment. Like the past is, you have a monitor, you have a modem, you have a fax machine, you have a, whatever, like an external keyboard. And then, with the iPhone, you have a single device all in one, right? And that's where the magic happens. So, when we launched a year before, 2 years ago, actually, we launched a year ago, but 2 years ago on the way to launch, the whole movement was around modular. Do y'all remember that? You're not hearing anything about that anymore, right? Yeah, it's weird, right? It's actually because I think the world's swinging back towards for the first time, vertical integration all in one. If you can do it, you should, but you have to design protocols for each component. And that's what we've been doing. And it's been, this whole year has been about building, but we're getting close to the full stack. We're bringing the full vision to market, and then next year is all about monetization. Turn the fees on, because we need this thing to be a beast, and we need to be able to support our ecosystem, and we need to be self kind of regenerative, right? So that's what we're moving towards.
Now, Josh, I believe you have some materials to share with us, some screen shares. Do you want to take us through that now?
Yeah, sure. Let me just do this. I think I shared this last time, and this is 12 calls in a row, monthly calls. Maybe next year we'll do them quarterly, so I don't. So there's a little bit more time to like bring things to market. But I do want to just touch upon some of the things that we're doing. Let me go ahead and do this window. Can you all see my screen?
We
Let me know if you can see
indeed.
this.
There it is. We got it.
Okay. So there are many, many different ways that Supra can monetize. We haven't turned fees on because we're just focused on growth and perfecting our algorithms and such. But we have price feeds. We have over 600 data pairs. We're not charging anyone barely anything. DVRF. And by the way, the price feeds include cryptocurrency, equities, commodities, FX. Right, FX is a big one because there is a world of that we knew about that's going to become big over time. Is cross-chain stablecoin foreign exchange rates. FX is like currency exchange, right? So you're going to want to layer one. You're going to want to have cross-chain communication because there's going to be coins deployed from different ecosystems, right? There's going to be the stablecoin specific chains. There's also going to be like Circle. There's going to be Tether. There's going to be different. Those are like all USD denominated, but there's going to be different denominations out there, right? You're going to need Oracle price feeds. You're going to need cross-chain communication. And another one is also automation, like layer one smart contracts with automation and stablecoin. You can basically create a Stripe competitor, like a subscription management service, right? So actually we will be competing a lot with Tempo, right? That's the Stripe chain, and Tempo actually invested into Commonware, which had that mini-MIT consensus algorithm that claimed to be faster than Hydrangea. We're like, whoa, hold up. We have a different technique improving on Hydrangea. We're actually faster than mini-MIT, but we'll publish that later. But either way, we're all competing, because it's a huge, massive prize out there. But you're going to want to have Oracle price feeds. You're going to want to have cross-chain communication. You're going to want to have automation. I don't think they thought about that yet. So we're going for that. DVRF is on-chain randomness, decentralized randomness. It's just like, what is that? What's that used for? Well, blockchains are perfectly ordered ledgers, the perfect accounting, right? So how do you have randomness in something that is perfectly ordered? You need a cryptographic method to create on-chain randomness. This powers GameFi, games of chance. It can power lotteries. It can power, like games like poker, whatever it might be.
Yep, and
And
we've seen that being implemented already with Crystara's blind boxes and Pixudi's gaming as well. So it's something that's already being leveraged by people that are on our layer one as it is.
that's right. And we're also servicing other chains for both Oracle price feeds and VRF, and we're number one in the world for VRF, more than Chainlink and Pith. So automation, that's only on our chain right now, and it's still early, but we have some. I got to review some of the work that the team is doing, and also talking back to the DeFi developers on Supra. They are indeed thinking deeply about how to create automation into the application, and some of them have very good ideas. I don't want to spoil it. I'll let them kind of market it, but every time I talk to them, I say, "Hey, so what are you doing with automation?" Because I'm basically Supra. We have to lean into our strengths. We have something that no one else has, right? Which is automation. And Aptos is starting to lean into this, right? Because they obviously know it's a good idea too. But we're the first to innovate this. We're the furthest ahead with this as well. And as a consequence, we want to make sure we own this. So I always talk to dApps like, what are you doing with automation, right? So that CLMM example, like the concentrated liquidity, where you move the liquidity up and down based on the price moves, you move the liquidity within a 5% band just constantly. That is such a great user experience in DeFi. And you won't be able to do it well or effectively without our technology. This will be fee generating, and we'll get to the stage where we will turn on automation services for other chains. So we could power vaults and asset movement on other chains on your behalf. That's what I meant by Supra becoming like a brain, right? And these will all be fee generating. Cross-chain communication, you can charge a couple of bips on the value that is exchanged. We're not charging anything. We're just focused on growth. And some of these things we may not turn fees on just yet, but some of them step by step will kind of make those decisions. We're bringing in a chief revenue officer who will be making a lot of these decisions with us. So that's really exciting because he has a great kind of background in sales and marketing and business. And that'd be great. Threshold AI Oracle's Tau, we've silently deployed this onto our testnet as well as another major blockchain. And we're talking to them directly about this. These are all going to be fee generating. So let's talk about the use case. Threshold AI Oracle. Okay, so prediction markets are pretty hot, right? So a lot of times prediction markets are either asking you like, is the price going to be above or below a certain number by a certain date? But most of them are just asking some random thing in the world, like does this world event happen or not, right? And especially AI Oracle, right now, it's only having a 95% accuracy. So it's not 100% accuracy yet because there's a lot of fine tuning we have to do, and this is early. But the thing is, if you can't get to a consensus, it'll just say it can't, and maybe some human has to come in and deal with it, right? Just like in a Polymarket, it's all human based, right? Everything in Polymarket is done by humans. That said, we think that for 95, and we're going to try to get this to like 99.9% accuracy. It's still a work in progress, but we have the lead here as well. The idea here is that for most use cases, we can resolve the market faster and cheaper than human intervention within, ideally tens of seconds after the event is finished, and then also just charge like $1. So it should be faster and cheaper than having kind of like the UMA Oracle style from Polymarket. That's the kind of goal there. That'll be fee generation, and hopefully we can do like 100,000 of these markets resolved per day across many chains. Because remember, we don't have to just be one application. There's like, for example, 20 prediction markets on BNB chain, right? Apparently, right? And then like Solana has a bunch, Ethereum has a bunch, Layer 2s. Every chain has prediction markets now. So there's going to be hundreds of these. And if we can tap into that, and we're the only one that has a service, we can be resolving hopefully many of these per day and just charge $1. Who knows what it is? We'll figure it out. But this could be a very good fee generating mechanism as well. Of course, smart contract execution, dynamic function market maker. I did talk about this last month, but I just want to let y'all know, how does this all work? Where does it all fit in? What is this? What's the cross-chain DEX, right? So native asset to native asset, if you want to go from like BNB asset to like an Ethereum asset or an asset on Solana, or perhaps even Monad, right? If we connect to them and we have this dynamic function market maker, which does kind of account for multiple factors, including Oracle pricing data. And since Supra can do this as quickly as possible, we actually think that this can be a better execution, better kind of pricing, as well as faster finality than even a centralized exchange, perhaps, right? So built-in DEX, that's going to be fee generating. And when you have that infrastructure, you have the cross-chain communication protocol and the kind of DEX in place, you can also do a lending protocol. Of course, you know that we're building a hyper-fast, super liquid. We may or may not change the name. I kind of like it. The token's going to be called Liquid. This is perpdex, right? Remember, perpdexes are completely run from price feeds, oracles, right? We got them built in. So we have 600 data feeds. If there's regulatory clarity or whatnot, we can also do equities because we have that data already. We can do FX, commodities, gold, silver, 600 different cryptocurrencies and growing, so on and so forth. These would be, as you know, could be very, very big feed generation. And we're collaborating with another team, right? So this technology, by the way, is we were rolling it out over what we might change the name of this, but a Supra chain container or a micro chain. It's basically producing blocks at like 10 to 25 milliseconds. So we've been discussing this for like 6 months. The prototypes are good. We're trying to bring it to test in the mainnet ASAP. I don't want to promise or overpromise, but there's significant progress on this, and we're joint venturing with another team on this, right? So we're not the only ones doing this and pushing this forward. And I've seen
Super Daddy in the comments, by the way, says keep the name. He loves the name Super Liquid.
Let's do it. And the idea is that, like, hey, you guys know what Hyperliquid is? Well, we're going to try to take the best ideas from their go-to-market and apply them to Supra, and also innovate on a couple more things that you can't necessarily get a Hyperliquid because we have like built-in automation. And we also have a couple more ideas that I don't want to leak yet because that's kind of our key go-to-market strategy. We will share that more in the days and weeks and months ahead as we get to a testnet. So pushing this forward, there's a lot of dependencies and such, but we're also going for that. And it's very competitive. And now there's so many perpdexes, right? There's so many prediction markets, but how do we stand out as a perpdex? Well, speed is definitely going to be one. I mean, we're talking about like 3 to 5 times faster than Hyperliquid, which is really fast. That's a good start, right? But also automation, and there's more that I don't want to reveal in case our competitors are watching, right? So we'll kind of keep these a little bit close to our chest. You will see us ramping up the marketing on this as we have closer to mainnet, because there's some ideas here that are really powerful that we don't want to leak too soon and have someone copy us, right? So we're going to kind of be a little bit careful with that one. Supermarket is also, collaborations with others to create a prediction market. What would we do differently if there's 100 prediction markets? Well, we have Threshold AI Oracle, right? We will offer that to others, but we also have something called privacy preserving voting, okay, or polling, where, so basically the idea behind that is that you have, right now these prediction markets, there's no privacy. So like sometimes people are just cheating, meaning like, the classic idea was, or need for this is there's some like KOL that was like in the desert doing some sort of 40-day fast, and someone created a prediction market on him, and he got wind of it, and he said, he or through his friends said he's going to lose a bet, and then basically canceled it. So if you know the bet and the odds, then it's easy to do. But what if the whole thing was shielded, right? The other things that we're thinking to do is, I'm not sure if you know this, but like, the Kalshis and the poly markets of the world, they're not open. Like you can't just create any market. Of course,
they're not permissionless.
They're not permissionless, yeah. And the thing is, we're going to be semi-permissionless, meaning we're going to have one thing that you have to pass. You're going to have to pass the gatekeepers of the Threshold AI Oracle. So there will be some guidelines, and like basically you can't bet on something that's illegal, you know what I mean, or morally questionable. But we're going to make it so that the AI decides on if you can do this or not. So it'll be trained on the guidelines, and if you can get them to pass, now there's a second step. You have to bootstrap your own liquidity. Okay. Now what we are thinking to do is during this bootstrapping liquidity process, kind of like pumped off fun, we actually want to introduce privacy. So you don't actually know what the odds are, but the key is if you bootstrap enough liquidity and you pass the guidelines of Threshold AI Oracle, you create the market, therefore you get revenue share in that market, right? So the poly markets and Kalshis don't have this. So this is the type of thing that we're collaborating with another group on this. Like how do we compete? We have to compete with what we have, which is our technologies. And our technologies are advanced and not readily available to anyone. So do we think that letting anyone create their own market, more or less, if they bootstrap their own liquidity, they should own revenue share in that market, right? And some of these markets can become huge, and they own it. And also we're trying to bring some social finance to this, where like maybe you live stream, you just on the fly create the market. You are responsible to bootstrap the liquidity, and if you do, you hit enough liquidity. And then like basically, let's suppose you have to bootstrap $5,000 of liquidity. You bootstrap enough liquidity, then the decryption happens. So it's first blinded, so you don't know who's voting which way, but you see, oh, okay, then now there's enough liquidity. Now we decrypted. Now you can see the odds, and the market goes live. Things like this could be interesting. And the key point, though, is that if you created the market, and perhaps if you invited friends, there's revenue share, right, on the volume that's traded within that market. So permissionless, semi-permissionless launching, as well as ownership of the market that you create. So that's pretty exciting. These are the types of ideas that we have to, like, this is the only way to compete. We got to bring something new to the table. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And with the tech stack already, we've seen prediction markets actually currently running in a small environment via ToonSwap. ToonSwap, of course, one of the projects, part of the Supra ecosystem, deployed on Supra's L1, and they've been running a couple of prediction markets on their dApp. So this is something that's already in action and live on Supra.
Yeah. So I mean, those ones, and basically any question in prediction market that's related to price, right? Our Oracle, decentralized Oracle agreement, Dora, it can handle. But if it's more of a question that is like, did this happen in the world? Who won the basketball game? Whatever it might be, right? That's where Threshold AI Oracle can step in, right? And yeah, there's also a couple others. I not remember off the top of my head, but yeah, certainly like folks can get this going. Yeah, so the infrastructure, it's permissionless. You can leverage this. I think the only thing that's not going to be 100% permissionless is Threshold AI Oracle, meaning like that has to be trained to not answer certain things. You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't answer like, how do you make a bomb or something like that, right? And like the answer is no. But yeah, basically, other than that, everything else is permissionless. Okay, so the last two things, and I guess I could just briefly mention this. So auto arbitrage, auto liquidations. What are these? Well, we have this idea of, we've heard of toxic MEV, maximally extractable value, right? But you haven't heard of good MEV or neutral MEV or non-toxic MEV, right? And it's a thing, meaning arbitrage and liquidations, they're actually maybe good for DeFi, or they are good for DeFi, or at the very worst, they're neutral. Our auto arbitrage is like, okay, if there is a venue like a DEX or some sort of venue that has a token or a pair of tokens that's trading, and you have another one, and then they're out of sync and there's a mismatch in the actual underlying value, that's what's called an arbitrage opportunity. Now, what we can do in Supra, because we have built-in layer 1 automation, we have system level automation, is we can actually execute a series of transactions to see if there's discrepancies and scoop that long tail of opportunities. They give you very small amounts to Supra, because Supra is so cheap. Like the execution and the fees are so cheap, we can actually capture these micro penny opportunities, so to speak, right? And we could run this like up to 3 times per second, super fast, right? So this is like, instead of letting these professional MEV connoisseurs take this value, right, which they may not be given back to the ecosystem, what if we captured that value and redistributed to the dApp where it came from, to the node operators, and eventually to a decentralized treasury that is going to be network owned, right? So remember all these things I mentioned, these 12 different methods, there's actually going to be 13 or so. They can power Supra buybacks, right? So this is how we plan to get this in gear. And yes, it's a huge build. There's each of these respective, they're either a protocol or an application itself, and something that's utilizing, they're basically all super dApps, right? Basically they can, they can actually be, if you get something that has product market fit, basically the one thing can fund the whole thing for eons, right? I mean, so basically the idea here, or the specific idea here, is that Super Layer 1 itself can capture the arbitrage opportunity that community misses. So community can go first, but if there's opportunities that they miss, we can capture that and redistribute and revenue share that with the dApp node operators into a decentralized treasury. Same thing with liquidations. Liquidations, like, oh, that's such a bad word. Well, the thing is, they're required to keep DeFi solvent, right? So DeFi exists to let people take their strategic bet they want to long or borrow or whatever it might be for whatever reason. to keep DeFi solvent, then you need to make sure the system it handles liquidations well, and that basically liquidations, auto liquidations, will guarantee solvency of every DeFi protocol, and these can also be very large fees, right? Between arbitrage and liquidations on Solana and Ethereum, there's been a couple billion, as far as I can tell, a couple $1 billion extracted from those ecosystems, right? Imagine if we can keep that value into the layer one itself. Of course, it won't be that large to that degree, but suppose we got there step by step, and this is a revenue model that we use. All these things here can be revenue models that buy back Super token, that can basically reduce circulating supply, become a treasury which can be community governed, right? And the community can decide what to do with it. But the key is you need to have mechanisms in place to actually capture that value in the first place. Automation is going to be key here. So we're going to do a proper launch about this, and I'm just going to kind of leak this as someone else someone had leaked this, somehow found the QA for this, and we're like, okay, might as well talk about it, because we are silently, this is not the main event. There's so much more that we are doing with auto arbitrage and auto liquidations, but we have something called auto balancer, which is basically auto arbitrage and auto liquidations in one. We deployed it at a small scale today.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk of auto balancer on X, so people have found this out.
Yeah. So we're like, I'm like breaking the cardinal rule. I'm supposed to not mention anything unless it's like full on mainnet. Like my marketing team's gonna kill me. But I don't care. So here you go. No, I love you guys. So we're just gonna go a little bit into it just to show you that, hey, we're actually doing things that you may not be aware of. We're deploying things and like actively building. Like this is me sharing a bit more that like I talked about this just briefly the other month. So this is not like, sure, 100,000 Supra in today's value is like not much, but it's, the key point is actually I was like extremely excited when we deployed this and we made our first dollar from this mechanism. For the layer one itself to capture value from the MEV that's usually taken from flash bots or the professionals, right? Remember, these are like maybe 30 entities in the world collecting that couple $1 billion of value, right? But what if the layer one itself can capture the value and redistribute it? So, what you're kind of seeing here are different routes, okay? Routes between different exchanges, different currencies, etc. That there's discrepancies. And we can actually run this automation. It's basically Supra has built-in flash bots, but like the good stuff, not the toxic MEV stuff. In fact, we have a lot of strategies to mitigate toxic MEV. This isn't even ready yet. I'm not even supposed to make the announcement. So, Kai, Jason, sorry, they'll probably tell me on Wednesday, you shouldn't have done that, Josh. But yeah, anyways, I can't help myself sometimes. So basically though, this is super important for the industry. This is paradigm shifting for blockchain economics, that this value that's otherwise leaked to parties and stakeholders that are not benefiting the ecosystem, we can capture it. And the idea, remember, is to redistribute it to the protocols that generate the opportunities, as well as node operators who are executing it, and then ultimately to the decentralized treasury, right? So at permissionless in New York City, that was my main point. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing. It's a technical feat. It's a technical marvel, by the way. Like no one else has done this. But imagine that, and you by the way, you had to have layer one Oracle, the automation built in. You had to have this technology to do this. But we're proving it works. And what you're seeing here, these routes, these are just the beginning. Where I think there's like only a couple tens of routes between pairs and venues. But these routes exponentially grow when there's more venues. There's lending protocols. There's more dexes. They'll have a variety of different assets. When they launch, the amount of routes that are possible go exponential. Our internal goal, we're at like 10, 20, 30, something like this. Our goal is to get to 100,000 routes. Okay. So you can imagine like this can become a very, very big value generation mechanism for layer one that no other chain can do. Okay. And this, we believe, is going to completely like be way bigger, orders of magnitude larger than transaction fees. So this is a revenue model that you can't do elsewhere. I know it's a little bit complicated to explain, but just basically search Supra's auto balancer and then put it into AI and see what AI says. So if you want to explain to me like I'm simple, or like I'm 5 years old, but basically we can capture the arbitrage, keeping spreads tight it's good for DeFi. We haven't even implemented auto liquidations yet, but like when these liquidation fees can be even bigger, we think this could be even bigger potentially. This is barely the beginning. We're like 1% into the journey of auto balancer, but we have proof that it's working and it can work and it can scale. And it's probably going to be the biggest revenue generation mechanism, even more than Super Liquid and everything else combined. That's what we think. And, step by step, I mean, step one is, I know you're like, oh, that's like nothing. Like 100,000 super tokens is nothing. That's cool. But just imagine where we're at when we 100,000x this. So it's that's kind of where we're headed towards. So let's see. We have a major Supra event coming up in early December, focusing on I assets. Okay, I assets, as we discussed before, is where you bring in assets from other chains, use it as basically into Super DeFi, earning block rewards as well as providing liquidity to the dApps, as well as there's more to it. And I'm not going to spoil it. I want you to show up on that. I think it's going to be December 5th or 9th. So very soon. IAssets, we're going to have another major interesting press release around this as well. IAssets is what brings liquidity to Supra. Okay. So I won't go into today. I do have the screens up, and you'll see basically what we have learned, and what's been hard for me to learn is, but I've heard, got your feedback, community feedback is basically, Josh, don't tell us anything until it's done, right? Until it's on mainnet. So, well, Auto Balancer is on mainnet technically. IS is also technically on mainnet, but there's more things that, we're not going to necessarily show. I might kind of show you this screen, for example, for just a second here. But just to show you, the purpose of this is just to show you that there's a lot of things we're developing, bringing to market that you won't hear about it because we're basically trying to make sure that we only share fully matured products. So I kind of broke the rules today by showing both of these things, but too excited. Sorry.
But look, that's what we love about you as CEO. You break the rules, when it matters,
constantly,
when it counts.
Unfortunately.
when it counts. And I think the community loves that. Josh, we're running low on time right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into what the community has to say. There is something here I just want to bring up for you. Is Trips on Acid is his username, but he wants you to check your DMs. There's obviously something. He's a very strong community member of the Supra ecosystem, so please check your DMs for a message from Trips on Acid. But also, the next one that I want to bring up real quick is from Mr. Bullrun, who asked about your auto arbitrage. He wants to know, can auto arbitrage capture arbitrage cross-chain?
Cross-chain arbitrage, possibly. I mean, so the thing is, remember, it wouldn't work the same. Okay, it wouldn't work the same because with automation built in Supra Layer 1, it's every single block we can check these things. So it's like same block, we call that 0 block delay execution. Cross-chain, you can't have 0 block delay guarantees. But there will be, I actually think what's going to happen for cross-chain arbitrage, it's going to be the dApps that capture that value. We ourselves are just going to focus on our Layer 1 itself. But I think the dApps can capture that value, yeah. So folks will create cross-chain protocols, leveraging our cross-chain communication, automation, and Oracle price feeds to kind of either do cross-chain yield farming or cross-chain arbitrage. It'll definitely happen, but I think that particular use case may be captured by the dApps.
And that's fair. I mean, already there are the protocols and dApps building on Supra, experimenting with cross-chain communication. So there's a lot to come. Shout out to Rock-U10. Rock-U10, a great team in the ecosystem. They say that as more dApps start to come, especially when EVM and Solana VM go live, this is going to be exponential. No two ways about that, Rock-U10. There was another question that I wanted to bring up real quick. Slash, this is another cross-chain question. It might be a little bit similar to the last one, but if you can touch on this, Slash just wants to know, do we have to bridge assets to the micro chain?
Oh, okay. For the kind of super liquid concept, you actually it's like bridging, but it's not really. It's basically just depositing into a smart contract on Super Layer 1. So if you want to engage in the perp dex, remember that we're going to be running this ultra fast. Like up to 3 times faster than hyperliquid. You know, the idea is like even 10. Okay, so 25 milliseconds is 40 blocks per second. One Mississippi, that was 40 blocks, right? And in our test, we have actually hit 10 millisecond blocks, but 10 to 25 millisecond blocks, you cannot notice the difference. To deposit into it, it's depositing into Supra's layer 1 smart contract. This thing, it basically exists on the layer 1, you know, basically. Okay, so we'll kind of explain it a little bit more. Basically, okay, I say basically too much. In a nutshell, what's happening is we can run this consensus in the microchain in a co-located, you know, like basically all in the same region. Now I want to make it very clear that we talked about this 6 months ago. I have the video and everything. So we're not copying others that are also trying to do this. You know, this is why it's important to kind of like get it out there and at least make some evidence of it. But we realized, oh wow, we can run a Supra, like basically a clone of Super Layer 1 in a microchain in the same region. Like they could be different data centers, but they could technically be the same data center, but they can be in the same region. Remember, latency from communication from one node to another is it adds latency. But if they're very close together, like a couple of miles apart, you know, or you know, same country or something like this, at least, like maybe a small country, not America, then the latency is very small, you know, very fast. So they kind of they're basically executing and ordering consensus or following the application rules, submitting the payload to Supra's layer 1 as a batch that gets included in a block and then executed on the layer 1 also. It's executed twice on the microchain, and then layer 1 for full finality, like 2 seconds later. That's the goal. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, full finality. You know, not 12 minutes, you know, not one, you know, these layer 2s are like a week, you know. So like this is 2 seconds, you know what I mean? So super fast. But yes, that was an interesting question. Good question. Like, how do you get it into it? You actually deposit it into a smart contract on Super Layer 1. These microchain nodes are Layer 1 nodes. So they know that it was deposited, so they can register. Then they run around a consensus that, yeah, I've seen that. Let's go. And then they just move as fast. They're basically executing the future. Like, it's basically like that. They're executing super fast. Layer 1 completes it. They trail execute it like a couple seconds later.
All right, let's wrap it up. We're close to the hour mark. The Mickey Green PH on YouTube has been very positive in the comments. He's talking about yourself here. Josh lives and breathes this project 24/7. He's always excited, always dropping updates, always pushing the team to ship faster and build better. So really encouraging. Final question I'm going to ask you from Levi Boy 2323. Levi Boy, I wonder your number 23, if that is a reference to David Beckham at Real Madrid, who was number 23. Curious about that. But Josh, final question for you this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you guys may be in the world. Josh, can you give us an update on Supra Liquid? I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, so as I was describing the technology behind the scenes, the application developers and the partners, they're pretty solid. They're almost done, you know. So it's a matter of both. Like I really am not supposed to say deadlines because you guys always crucify me. Like you're a second late, Josh. I'm gonna fudge you. I'm gonna, you know, like it's like, dude, chill, man. You know, like come on, like you don't understand. This is like rocket science. It's like that hard.
It's literal, you know? Rocket science, exactly.
Well, I wouldn't quite say that, but like it's cutting edge computer science for sure, and I think everyone can agree on that. No, but so I would love to be in a position for us to demo this on a test net. I'm not going to say it. Very soon, though. Very soon. When I say soon, it's, man, my preference would be like less than a month. Okay. But yeah, let's see. Maybe sooner. We'll see. But yeah, so I mean, look, you should be able to get at least some early kind of sense of like how it behaves, the speed of it. The real magic, remember, it's not just about speed. There's gonna be 100 competitors. Okay, how do we compete though? Something new. That's what we're gonna have to reveal to you all later. There will be a points program. There'll be an airdrop. You know, there'll be large incentives. But I mean, okay, so this is where it gets complicated because what's happening right now is with the emergence of these other pertexes. What people are doing is the following. they'll put a position in one perp dex, they'll long it here, they'll short it there, earning points on both. So they're kind of delta neutral, they call it, right? So they're like, oh man, how do we deal with this? So we're gonna have to figure out how to like prevent like farming this, where it's real heavy hardcore users that believe this, that also like the product a lot.
Does farming, does position farming not actually bring liquidity to a platform like Super Liquid as well?
A good question. I guess it does, but I want sticky liquidity. We need sticky liquidity. We need people to come here for the right reasons. And just to share a little bit about this, like how would we possibly address this? Maybe there's certain types of behavior that awards you for the airdrop. And then there's a different type of behavior that awards you to how to get it out, like actually cash it out or, get your drip. So this is the type of things we're looking into. There's a lot of gamification I want you guys to know that we're looking into, because we know with a pool of 100 of products, sure, we're going to be fast. Sure, we have built-in Oracle. Sure. But what else do we have? We have automation. That is something that no one else has. But beyond that, how do we attract liquidity? How do we track gamification? How do we track community? I'll give you a hint. Social finance, SocialFi. We're doing something there. That's all I can say.
That's all he can say. He leaves it at that. So many positive comments coming through, certainly in the last 10 minutes. So big shout out to you, Super community. Thank you for staying positive. I know that there are always going to be the doubters and people who are upset, but we've had a lot of positive comments coming through. Dutch Venture, Pags YT, Slash, Crypto Latino Pro, Super Daddy, of course, big community member. Fred V8155 talking about your faith and conviction. Sun, there are so many positive comments coming through. Thank you, chat. Thank you so much. What a great community call. Josh, this has been one of the better ones. The next one should be around about Christmas. So we'll figure that out. You mentioned you might want to do these quarterly. We'll leave that up to you and John and the foundation to decide. But thank you so much for what you're doing and what you have put together for today's call. And congratulations on 1 year. This is a really huge milestone for the Supra ecosystem. Any final comments as we wrap up?
Look, thank you, James, as well, for joining us. Thank you to our Super team. You guys know more information than the broader kind of community. It's been a challenge, and we're doing our best to kind of, max it out and max out potential. And it comes with its own, kind of sense of pain. Our community that has been with us through the pain, thank you as well. For the new folks, really grateful that you understand the vision. And I think, what has been helping me recently is, like NVIDIA, like, Jensen Huang, and also even Steve Jobs videos. He basically says like there was, I forgot the details, but I think it was Jensen that said, if he knew how hard it was, he wouldn't do it. And I feel the same way. Like sometimes I'm like, wow, if I knew how this would be this hard to get this far, with these conditions, I probably wouldn't do it. But why do you do it? And it's because you have a vision in mind, and you have these small wins along the way that keep you going. And so I absolutely believe that we're on the cusp of something incredible, that the global kind of super world computer needs to have the components that we have, and you need to vertically integrate it. So, I just want to say thank you to you all. It's been a hard experience for all of us, including, token holders, and the only thing that we can commit to is to continue to work really hard and to bring really creative ideas to market as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. So we're still on it. We're very motivated. We're a global team. We're a global community, and let's change the world. It really does require a tribe. So thank you all so much.
Josh, thank you for your time. I know how busy you are, how crazy things are for you at the moment. So many different plates that you're spinning. It's really remarkable. So thank you for your time. Big shout out to Mustafa backstage. Mr. Backstage is off at the moment. So Mustafa has stepped in. What a man. Thank you so much for your work. And we'll catch you guys in the next community call exactly 1 month from now. Don't forget the SUP happening this Thursday, same place, same time. It's the Thanksgiving edition. Join Chase and myself then. Looking forward to that. So much going on in the Supra ecosystem. The Dexlin ICO is almost over. So if you haven't contributed to that, you better get in now because it's about to close. They're currently at 128% of their target. So remarkable support from the Supra community. Josh, thank you again. We'll catch everyone in the next edition.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, James.
Supra Labs, we taking off.